faked appendicitis to get out of school and they actually took it out. When I, 38F, was a kid I faked sick. A lot. Towards the end of my 4th grade year, I realized I needed to up my game if I wanted to keep missing school. Both my dad and brother had had appendicitis, so I knew it was on the lower right side of the body. Woke up the next day and pretended it to have said pains. Things went great at first. No school, house to myself. Then later that night my parents invited my neighbor over who was a nurse. She asked me some questions and pushed on my stomach. Next thing I know I'm being taken to the hospital. They run a myriad of tests on me. Weirdly enough my white cell count was high even though I wasn't really sick. They do an ultrasound and I almost piss my pants, those things are the worst. Lastly, they even send in the official diagnostic doctor, basically he's like House. He asks me all these weird questions and pulls and pushes on random limbs. I say OW randomly, hoping I don't get made. They ask me like 35 times whether it's my first period and after the 35th no they send me upstairs to prep for surgery. This is when I start to internally freak out. I had gone too far and felt like I couldn't back out and was terrified my parents were going to flip out on me. So I went through with it. Recovering from surgery was one of the most painful experiences of my life. And it wasn't until I told my therapist about 10 years later that I even realized how dangerous it was. Edit, I find it kind of funny that a story about me making a huge lie is being accused of being a lie. Karma I guess lol. Mexicans, in Mexico, are discriminatory AF towards South Americans and try to get them arrested. Yes, 100% hypocrisy. As a Mexican, I've seen this happen. Visited family, and my accent was different BC I was gone for so long. PPL in the street were quick to try to snitch to get me in trouble with authorities there. The same exact people who would love to go to the US and not get snitched on in the same way. You see, Mexico, as poor as it is still richer than many countries in the Americas. South Americans try to sneak in for a better life. The southern border is heavily fortified. Lots of cases of disc rim towards darker PPL BC, oh you're closer to the equator if terrain darker so that means you're South American. Also, it's hard to travel in Mexico for work for Mexicans. There are issues with needing papers to get a job if you're a resident of one state trying to work in another. Surprising, but that's how things are. If you think it's bad in the US towards Mexicans lately with needing papers, I assure you it's not even close to how it is in Mexico towards South Americans. I'm not exactly a fan of my own people is my confession. Edit, another thing. Look at the list of cities in the world with most murders per capita. Mexico has most of the top 10 and many more on the list. Is that really a society that would have the best of morals or brotherly love? Edit 2 From what I've seen, the Spanish-speaking countries all get along with each other except Mexico. Mexicans don't even get along with Mexicans. If a Mexican is further from the border and is whitewashed, the ones born and raised in America closer to the border will still try to speak English with an immigrant accent and call that person a buster. How dare he speak English clearly and act like an American? It was crazy seeing them wave Mexican flags in the US during those confrontations with federal agents. Imagine if a white American waved the American flag in Mexico trying to assert rights.
Something happened at Spencer's recently I need to share. I'm 17 years old, and I was at the mall by myself going into stores and looking around. At my mall, they have Spencer's, and I went into there. They sell sex toys on the back wall of the store. I decided to go back there and look at them. I wasn't even purchasing them. I was just going to look around and then leave. I was just back there looking at all the products, and then reading the back of some items. Suddenly, an employee came out of nowhere and asked me, "Are you 18?" Instead of answering that question, I immediately turned my head the opposite direction and walked out the section and tried to act like someone didn't say something to me. Not only did I got out the section, I also exited the store. I actually got scared when she came up and asked me though, because of how suddenly it was. Everything was silent, and then an employee came up out of the blue. It would be pretty embarrassing to get kicked out of that area. And plus, if you're not 18, might as well just remove yourself anyways because you'd already be getting kicked out. It wouldn't have made a difference. I intentionally used a store's self-checkout mistake to get items for free. This happened a while ago, and I still feel guilty about it. I was using the self-checkout at a grocery store and noticed that one of the items I scanned didn't register properly. The screen didn't add it to the total, but the system didn't alert the attendant either. At first, I thought it might just be a delay or that the system would correct itself, but it never did. I quickly realized the item hadn't actually been added to my total. Instead of scanning it again or calling the attendant over, I just placed it in the bag with the rest of my groceries and continued checking out. Once I noticed that it worked, I actually did it again with another item that had the same issue. I knew exactly what I was doing at that point. I walked out of the store with items that I knew I hadn't paid for. No one stopped me and nothing ever came of it, but I still think about it sometimes. It wasn't a lot of money, but that doesn't really make it better. I knowingly took advantage of the mistake instead of fixing it. I regret doing it, and I wish I had just paid for everything like I should have.